Alright, so in this video we're going to be going over ecosystems. So an ecosystem is an area made up of living and non-living things, and these go into your biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic meaning living things and abiotic meaning non-living things. So it's how these things interact within their environment to survive. So terrestrial ecosystems are land ecosystems. This includes forests, rainforests, grasslands, deserts, and the tundra. Aquatic ecosystems include water-based ecosystems like lakes and ponds. Those are both freshwater. Oceans are saltwater or like marine ecosystems. And estuaries are kind of mixed in. They're brackish water, which means freshwater and a saltwater mix. Usually that's where rivers, like freshwater rivers, run into the ocean. It makes this perfect environment for a perfect environment for this ecosystem and the things within it to survive and thrive. So a couple of things I want you to do within this section is to pause the video, and I would like you to get a few details about different ecosystems. So what are the different types of forests? What's different about the rainforest from grasslands? What about the desert and the tundra? And then your aquatic ecosystems, difference between saltwater and marine or ocean ecosystems. I want you to find some details on each one that we can compare when you meet with me in your group. So within each ecosystem, you have these roles. So producers are living things that make their own food. These are examples are like plants, grasses, shrubs, trees. Producers undergo photosynthesis, which is the process that plants use to take sun's energy and turn it into food. They make their own food. They produce their own food. So one way I remember this is thinking of producers or produce in the grocery store. It's like your fruits and vegetables. So they are actual producers, and they produce their own food to go through this process. Consumers are living things that get energy by eating. They must eat like you and I, and there's different levels within that. So consumers fall into the categories of herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. They must eat in order to get their energy. Herbivores consume plants, so they only eat plants. They get their energy from the plants they eat. Omnivores are consumers that eat plants and animals. Humans are considered omnivores because most of the population eats plants and meats, so they go under both. Carnivores are consumers that only eat meat. They eat other animals to survive. And then another role within an ecosystem is the decomposers. They're living things that get energy by breaking down waste and dead plants and animals. So I want you to look at these pictures over here and see if you can match them up with are they a producer, consumer, or decomposer, and which consumers go with herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. So take a moment, pause the video, and see if you can match that up, and I'll continue in just a second. Okay, so of course a producer is going to be your tree. It creates its own energy. Consumers within that are your deer, your herbivores, they eat plants. Your black bear is an omnivore. It eats meat, but it also eats berries and other plants. And then the wolf is going to be your carnivore. It eats other animals. And earthworms are decomposers. They break down waste and dead plants and animals. It's their job, though. We don't have a bunch of dead stuff just lying all over. It's amazing how this cycle keeps everything in check and clean and orderly. So a food chain is a model that shows the path of energy from one living thing to the next. Remember when we talk about energy, it's like what eats what within this ecosystem. So you go from your producers to your consumer, and decomposer. So you're layered by what eats what. So in this example, we have our grass, and it's our producer. And then what eats the grass, for example, this grasshopper is a primary consumer. It is a herbivore. Your secondary consumer is a bluebird. It eats the grasshopper. And then your tertiary consumer is your snake. It gets its energy from eating the bird. And then your owl is your apex predator. It's the top of the food chain and it eats the snake. So it gets its energy as it goes back down and traces back. Now, a decomposer, another example of a decomposer is a mushroom. They're actually fungi. A lot of people will confuse them and say that they are producers and that they are plants. This will be on the EOG. Fungus is a decomposer. And when we go out on muddy sneakers, you actually see this process happening, that when trees have fallen down, that they usually have a lot of mushrooms on them because it is breaking it down into the soil. That's its job. So it is a decomposer. So once these pass on, then it's the decomposer's job to break it down and the process starts again. It's the circle of life. Next, we have a food web. It is several food chains that connect within an ecosystem. So this is an example of a savanna ecosystem. So you have your producers on the bottom. You have your herbivores or primary consumers in your second layer. You have your secondary consumers in your third layer, and then you have your top layer as your tertiary consumers. These are your tops of the food chain, and you can see that they intermingle, but you can tell this is how these animals, how these biotic factors work together to survive and balance out this ecosystem. So next we have our energy pyramid. A pyramid is a model that shows how the amount of energy changes as energy moves through the food chain or food web. Remember, energy meaning just like you and I have to eat to have energy and survive, these animals do too. So energy decreases as you go through the food chain. So producers have more energy than consumers. So when you start from the bottom, you have that bigger block, and that's our producer. So in this example, we have a tundra biome as our food chain within this pyramid. So our producer, see how it has 1,000, I just forgot what this means. I'll have to look that up and get back to y'all on that. So looking at the number and how it breaks down each time. So 1,000, and then the herbivore, the Arctic hare, eats this Arctic willow, and it's the primary consumer, but only gets 100 of that 1,000. Then the secondary consumer, the wolverine, only gets 10 of that 100 when it eats the Arctic hare. And then our tertiary consumer only gets 1. This polar bear only gets 1 of the 10 that the wolverine had. So you can see how it breaks down. It's really the powers of 10 within here. So it's dividing by 10 each time. So you can actually see as it goes up the energy pyramid, less energy is stored. So that bear is going to have to eat a lot more to get its food source, to get its energy. So, and last but not least, this one's pretty easy. Predators are animals that hunt other animals, and prey are animals that are hunted. Competition is the demand for resources by two or more organisms. So, for example, when you think of competition, do you see how these arrows intertwine so that these things, like this antelope, is eaten by more than one predator? So there's going to be a competition for that population of antelope. So in this example, sharks eating the seals, osprey eating fish, and lions eating the antelope. They're predator and prey relationships. And what we also need to remember within this relationship that we will go over more, and what some of you have already done in Muddy Sneakers, is that when a food source decreases, so does the next layer. So does that predator's numbers as well. It will go down. So, for example, if the antelope population decreases due to their food source, say there's a drought and their food source is dried up, then they start dying off. Then lions, their population will decrease because their food source decreased. And some of you in my group, when we talked about Bojangles chicken, that's like if I go buy an 8-piece tailgate special and we say that every person gets 2 pieces of chicken, then I can feed 4 people. If my food source increases and I get a 20-piece, then I can now feed 10 people. But let's say as I bring in that food, I drop the chicken, and now we're back to 10 pieces of chicken were saved that didn't hit the floor. Then I'm only going to be able to feed 5 people, and the other 5 are going to be out of luck. They're probably going to leave to find another food source. And if this keeps happening over and over and over again, they're not going to get to eat, and then they'll end up dying. And decomposers will take over from there. But there's a relationship. When we don't have food, then it lowers. If there's an increase, it increases. That relationship keeps going. So I hope this presentation helps you review. I want you to see if you can think of some other predator and prey relationships to put in your notes. Going back through within your PBL, include a pyramid and how wherever your endangered species would land on this pyramid and within the food chain in its ecosystem. Make sure you include that because that's important to the key of unlocking why they're endangered. So, hope this helped. I'll talk to y'all soon.